I was born a dragon. My father named me Chonglei, from a Chinese proverb meaning to ride the thunder. The complete proverb says dragons shouldn't hide unseen. Rather, they should ride the thunder, soar the skies. I can't breathe fire, nor have the wings to fly, but I do have a burning desire to go above and beyond. One day, I hope to soar alongside the other creative greats and fulfill my destiny.
Okay, my chess friends, welcome to this chess video, and we are going to do a video, as the title suggests, on a variation of the English opening called the Reverse Dragon, and you'll see why just in a moment. And the English opening, as you know, begins c4, black plays in the centre with e5, we play g3, and in the videos that we have covered so far, we have looked at this move here, knight to c6. As one of the contributors to this channel pointed out, it is not the most popular move. The most popular move is in fact knight to f6, with the idea of pushing the pawn to d5. Well, we play bishop g2, we have d5, c takes d, knight takes d5. We play in the centre and hitting this undefended pawn on e5. We have knight to c6, double zeros. And here there are essentially two moves for black. The best move is knight to b6, taking control of this square d4. And the other move that we'll look at is bishop to e7, which essentially allows the move d4. So knight to b6 is the best move. Here we play d3, bishop to e7, and this very logical move, knight b to d2. Normally the knight goes to c3, but it's actually better here on d2 for reasons that I'll explain later. And we have double zeros. And you can look at this position and you can see that it is, white is playing the Sicilian dragon with reverse colours. Here we have the famous dragon formation, with the head on the knight here and the dragon tail here. And just like the Sicilian dragon, the ideas are very similar for white. And before I look at any games in any depth, let's just take a look at the ideas for white. So what are some of the typical ideas for white? Well, we're going to play a3, and if black allows us to play b4. And bring our bishop to this beautiful long diagonal. I'm going to try to prove that this e-pawn is weak, just like we normally do in the Sicilian defense with reverse colours. It's usually a good idea for black to prevent this move, b4, with a move like a5. Because if we're allowed to play b4, well, we're going to play b5, kicking this knight, which is a defender of the e-pawn, which we're trying to prove is weak. In that case, if he plays a5, well, we simply play b3 and put our bishop to the long diagonal anyhow. The rook is, of course, coming to the open c-file, and sometimes you will see instances of an exchange sacrifice, and I'll show you that just in a little moment. What about our central pawns? Sometimes we can utilize our extra central pawn by changing the pawn structure. We can play e3 and d4. And this will give us an extra central pawn if there's an exchange between these two, the d and the e pawn. And we can utilize that, giving us extra space in the center and sometimes as an outpost for our pieces. Sometimes black plays very aggressively with a move like f5. And here we can even try something like e4, fixing this weakness here on e5. And I'll show you again where that actually happens. So these are some of the typical ideas that we can utilize in this line. Let me just show you the exchange sacrifice. It's very, very interesting concept. Here's the position from a game played in the 1990s. And you can see that black has weakened the e5 pawn by playing the move f5. And white can take advantage of this with a beautiful exchange sacrifice, just as sometimes happens in the Sicilian defense, with rook takes on c6, b takes on c6 and knight takes e5, and white has proven that the e point was weak. With f4, queen takes c6, f takes and h takes, and white in fact went on to win this game. You can see that he has a simply beautiful pawn structure in comparison to these shattered queenside pawns of black, and he has two absolutely unopposed central pawns. And the black king meanwhile is looking rather airy. So this is an idea to keep in mind, the exchange sacrifice, especially if your opponent has weakened the e5 point. You can play something beautiful like this. So we'll take a look at some games, actual games now. White has just played knight b to d2, and normally, and probably best, is black simply to castle. Sometimes black tries to play super aggressively as if he's white, and play a move like bishop to g4, delaying castling. Well, we'll play a3. Black tries to stop the idea with e5, b3, and the super aggressive f5. We're not phased, bishop to b2. I'm going to try and prove that the e pawn is weak. You can see that the f pawn is advanced. b4. Very interesting move. It's not really good for black to take this because, well, if he does take a takes b, we end up proving that the e pawn was weak anyhow. Let's just look at the black position. So we'll play b4. Black played queen to e7, and yeah, you guessed it, we pushed b5. Knight forced back. h3 kicking the bishop, bishop h5. a4 cementing our queenside pawns. And here black plays c5. Well, we take en passant. And here is an idea that I referred to earlier, fixing this weakness here on e5 with the excellent e4. Triple zeros, bishop to a3, queen b3, dubious bishop to f7, queen to b5, f takes, knight takes. And after this move here, black in fact resigned because, I mean, what can he do? Even if he takes, well, we simply take. And two pieces are under attack, the rook and the knight. So this is what can happen if black becomes ultra aggressive and instead of castling tries to play something like bishop to g4 and ideas like f5 and storming our castle position with some type of premature attack before he has developed his pieces and put his own king to safety. So the best for black is probably to play double zeros, and we play a3. Black stops it with a5. Play b3 instead, bishop to e6. Bring our bishop to the long diagonal. Black plays f6. Queen to c2. Queen to d7. And here is another idea we spoke about, changing the pawn structure in the centre. Because theoretically we will have an advantage in the centre because we have a 2-on-1 scenario. Well, rook f to d8 and d4. E takes. Knight takes d4. Here, black in fact played bishop to d5. Bishop takes d5. Queen takes d5. Knight takes c6. Queen takes c6. Queen takes and b takes. Two double isolated pawns on a half open c file. Got to defend our knight first. a4, b4, c5. Black's trying to get rid of his weakness. B takes. Bishop takes. Rook a to c1. Rook to a5. And what will actually happen is that white will put so much pressure that it will reduce black to passivity. And this is in fact what happened in the game. You can see the king is coming across, putting pressure on this, and black is kind of reduced to passivity, defending his weaknesses here. Now the game actually ended in a draw, but if you liked you could play on in this position, no problem, and you have some advantages here in fact because of the passivity of black pieces, and you even have a kingside pawn majority. You could play on in this position if you like and try to prove your advantage. So these are some of the ideas that we play in the knight. But the knight goes to b6 in this variation here. Let us take a look at a game where black in fact plays bishop to e7 instead, allowing us to play an immediate d4. We actually have a game from Anthony Costin himself, Grandmaster Anthony Costin, who wrote the book, The Dynamic English. So let's take a look at Anthony's game. This is Costin versus Kishnev, and black has just played bishop to e7. And this allows Grandmaster Costin to play the immediate d4. E takes, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, queen takes d4, knight to f6. Queen to a4 check. Queen to d7. We have no interest in exchanging queens. c6. And here Grandmaster Costin makes use of his extra central pawn with the move e4. Double zeros. Knight to c3. Queen to d6. Rook e1. Queen to c5. h3. Rook e8. Bishop e3. Queen h5. And here what actually happens is that after the provocative g4, black sacrifices here on g4. Bishop takes g4, ace takes g4. It looks really, really scary for white. But as soon as this light square bishop leaves the board, this is a super defender of the king side. Knight takes g4. And I mean, even if the queen comes here, I mean, there's nothing really on here for black. And Anthony Costin plays this rather cool knight to d4. g5. knight f5, knight h2, rook d7, rook e6, queen d1, g4, and now, because of the position of this knight, black has back rank problems. And Grandmaster Costin immediately takes advantage of this with queen to d7, rook d1, again threatening the back rank. Black's got to play a move like h6, but he loses the pawn immediately. And as soon as these queens come off the board, white gets a raging attack. Look at this here. And maybe a move like, I don't know, bishop d6 is coming, and if white exchanges all pieces, white will be up an entire piece, and black's position has simply no compensation for it. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation, my chess friends. I'm a little bit rusty, but I hope you learned something from this. Thank you very much for taking the time. I wish you well with your own chess. Take care and goodbye.